Hey up, it's Noir Vortex here. I'm just doing a video today. Obviously it's been a few days now after the Manchester bombings. It's all kind of been a bit very crazy the last few days. It's all very close to me, literally, and because I live in Manchester. But I just wanted to make a quick video commenting on some of the emerging online discourse which I've already seen occurring on YouTube, Twitter, social media, etc. Not really seen much going on Facebook. That's because I'm, friends with most people who are quite similar to me in terms of their views, which I would define as either socialist or liberal, I suppose, in some respects. But anyway, without further ado, I'm just going to crack on and give a few examples. So I guess I'll give like the start from the top level up and then work down. So in general, obviously most of the discourse has been respectful, not trying to inflame a lot of anger at the minute, because that's going to be really counterproductive, and it's basically, you could probably call it somewhat politically correct, but I think it's that kind of political correctness that can be excused, because we've just had an extremely horrible and violent attack, and basically people are tiptoeing around. Obviously people are necessarily tiptoeing around the fact that there was an Islamist militant who did this, and by all accounts, what we've heard in the media, a kind of damaged individual essentially. But the thing I'm finding annoying is to even point out the nuances. For example, to say maybe not all Muslims are militant Islamists, which is a fact, and Islam has everything from, there is a minority who are very much into the radicalised form of Islam, not very many. You've got conservative Muslims who have more conservative Islamic views without necessarily supporting terrorism, and liberal progressive Muslims. But just stating these things, you get immediately attacked online. I've already been called, as an offence for some reason, I've been called Jewish, which isn't really an offence, but someone was kind of using it in a negative term towards me. A communist, which I'm not. I'm not a communist. I've read communist work. I've read many philosophical pieces of work. It doesn't make one something because one reads. I read parts of Mein Kampf. Does it make me a Nazi? This is the kind of attitude you deal with a lot online, basically, is the fact that people online, well, it's trolls a lot of the time anyway, and especially the alt-right as well, they kind of just make a bunch of assumptions about you based on appearance, based on not really much information, to be honest. There's many other occasions where in the last few days I've been accused of supporting terrorism even, because I made the point, which is obvious again, that not all Muslims support militant Islam, which is true. And then there's been a lot of misinformation going on there on the alt-right kind of dialogues about how UK is a Muslim country, which is bollocks. There's got information from the 2011 census. Muslims are about 4.4% of the population. Our official church religion is Church of England, and regardless of that, it's a slippery slope argument this one to get into, because, well, for a start, it's not based on anything resembling truth, because we don't have a state religion apart from the Church of England, and that's kind of a bit of a fluffy link in a lot of ways. And Islam's just under 5% of the population, so it's very far from being the dominant religious force. All there is, really, especially considering what's happened, and I don't understand where people are getting this idea from, that we are not being critical of the ideology that has produced what's happened. Everybody's critical of it, Muslims included. But then if I point these kind of things out, I'm instantly getting accused of being a cultural relativist, of being an apologist for terrorism, and it's an extremely frustrating process, to be honest, to have to regurgitate the same line again and again of, no, people don't seem to be able to, I guess it's a lot of idiots online basically just can't separate out the fact that there is a politicised form of Islam which kind of emerged from Ayatollah Khomeini's Iranian Revolution, the suicide bombing. I'll link to the few links below that kind of explain the origins of suicide bombing in terms of historically. So now, Ayatollah Khomeini, during the leader of the Iranian Revolution, he basically mutated aspects of interpretations of the Quran around killing oneself, and he reinterpreted those things, and that obviously has spun out of control over decades and decades, and that kind of has been wound out of control to the point where obviously it has become a commonly used terrorist tactic to blow oneself up. So yeah, there is a lot of there's two sources below that I can link to which explain that. One of it's just from a BBC documentary, so I'm sure I'm going to get kind of people saying it's not a reputable source. But I was actually talking about this earlier. The BBC, I think the thing that really confuses me about people's discourse about the BBC is the liberals and lefties often say it's biased towards the government, i.e. the Tories. And then you see a lot of figures on the right who just say it's a liberal, well, they usually use language like cesspool or liberal kind of elite, a liberal institution. And I was talking to my mate about this earlier on. We were out drinking last night, I had a chat quickly before he head off. And essentially, why I think this is because the BBC at its best, and it's not always, the BBC at its best is actually relatively, and I do say this with caution, relatively balanced and relatively objective. So you get both a left and a right perspective. Sometimes it can be more skewed towards whatever the government at that time wants. But I think that's kind of the underlying reason why a lot of leftists and rightists, like left wingers and right wingers, have kind of this weird crossover idea where they kind of think the BBC represents their interests best because it balances both views out essentially. I mean, I'm talking beyond just the BBC News. Even Newsnight is actually relatively balanced, even though Jeremy Paxman is not on it anymore, is he? But was always a bit attack dog, and you could tell he's had probably slightly liberal right of centre views. But I think we've actually got relatively decent amount of coverage and journalistic integrity with the BBC. Not always, but sometimes. And obviously there's been a lot of scandals there. Anyway, we're going off on a separate point now. Basically, I think now we do have to ask questions. And also I'm going to make this balanced. I have seen some discourse on the left from some, and I do strongly say this, in a few forums who are already saying that, talking about conspiracy theories and conspiratorial thinking. And I really think at this point, without any evidence beyond some things, video clips from RT of all places, I don't think it's necessarily the right thing to be doing. If evidence does emerge that something's been missed, or that the government have, without even questioning, ignored something very important, or have purposefully ignored something, that would be big. But at the minute, it's just speculation, and like, this was happening like the day after, and I was just there like, what? Why are you speculating about this based on no evidence whatsoever? Like, I just saw a blog post, I'm not going to link to it, but it was basically just saying that the Tories let this happen, knowingly let it happen. I mean, as much as I don't like the Tories, and I'm really not a Conservative fan at all in any way, shape or form, this is just rabid fucking ridiculous talk to be having at this point. Sure, if there's evidence of something coming out, or a leaked email, or kind of whatever, something comes from the civil service that proves that the Tories purposely ignored this. Well, for one, it wouldn't make sense that they'd do it, because it would be political suicide. They wouldn't be in power ever again. It would be the end of the Tory party forever. If it came out that they knew a terrorist attack was going to happen and they purposefully ignored that information and didn't do anything about it, they'd be out of power forever. They would dissolve instantly. The UK would not stand for that. It would, if not rise up in revolution, it would be so pissed off to vote that they would be voted out on a landslide, and probably there'll be charges pressed obviously against the individuals who ignore the information and all the rest of it. We do actually have a relatively decent justice system here, so you'd hope that would be what would happen. But anyway, that's irrelevant because I don't think that's what's happening. And like I said, I'm not a fan of the Tories, but to start kind of these conspiratorial threads, well, for one, it divides the left and makes us seem like a bunch of rabid kind of Trotskyists or something. And also, there's no evidence. There's no evidence for this stuff having happened this way. What we really need now in the discourse is to stop just blaming Muslims as one entire group instead of actually seeing the whole complex picture. That needs to happen. Obviously, the alt-right are going to do that. They're a bunch of trolls. So that's by the by, but more saner individuals can at least take that on board. And I don't think it's political correctness gone mad to mention that. It's just actual nuance. Other thing, conspiratorial talking without actual evidence produced is useless and a bit cynical, really. And one other thing I've seen emerging online, only on Twitter so far, is people trying to cash in on this. I tweeted about this a few days ago, but basically someone was, I don't know, I'm trying to dig for more information from Twitter and the Manchester News Twitter account, but someone's basically trying to sell I Love Manchester t-shirts for like 20 quid, but it looks like they're not actually donating any of the money to the Victims Fund. Now, I'm hoping to be proved wrong, but if so, that's the most cynical marketing ploy I've ever heard of for ages. And we all know that, you know, marketing people are essentially the Antichrist most of the time. They do anything for a quick buck. I probably have mates who work in marketing, so I don't mean you specifically, you just need to pay your rent or whatever. But I mean, I have an inherent distaste for marketing. I think it's just I would never be into marketing because it's just, it just leaves a horrible taste in my mouth, especially in cases like this where, you know, we just had a bombing take place. Obviously, the I Love Manchester symbol is becoming one of the symbols that's been used as a statement of defiance, and someone's literally trying to make hundreds of thousands of pounds out of that. It's cynical and it's marketing, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but that's that. Anyway, I'm just going to finish this video. It's been a bit of a stream of consciousness. I just had to get this out of my head. I've been attacked a lot online for just trying to basically defend and use common sense, which has been somewhat frustrating. So I thought, instead of just typing for the next 6 hours, I'll just put it all down in a video and see what people think. Alright, cheers. Okay.